Alright guys, so if you haven't seen the gameplay video for this Kid Goku, I want you guys to check that out. That'll be clickable on the screen in the top right corner right now, also down below in the description, and then finally clickable on the sides of the screen in the last 20 seconds. So this is more of a continuation of that video in which in the first few minutes I kind of talked about how there are a lot of issues with the design choices for GT as a team, and we're going to delve into that for today's video. So if you're new to the channel, please be sure to subscribe for more content like this and other gameplay videos as well. This isn't really a gameplay video for the record. Also, today's video like goal is going to be 1,000, and let me know in the comment section down below what you guys think about some of the things that I talk about when you finish listening, and then on top of that, how would you fix some of the issues that I raise when it comes to this team. So first and foremost, since Goku's here, he's the new one, like I said, check out that other video for a more detailed explanation. I will say that there are a couple of things I forgot to mention, and first and foremost, I really do like his mechanic here to restore Vanish, especially paired with that Kid Goku equip. This is nice because anytime he draws an arts card, and for example, it's cheesable if you end the combo with the blue card, you randomly are going to draw up to 4 cards, and that's a lot of Vanish restoration as well. So like, that's a really good mechanic, but outside of that, he doesn't really do anything that really wows me. I mean, he has a good amount of damage increased buffs. He has some stuff in here for draw speed and drawing cards, and that's more or less what he's going to do. He's a combo damage dealer. I guess the next most impressive thing in his kit's probably the amount of health that he restores on the main. That's a lot of health to restore. I think in my gameplay, he was restoring like 1.2 million. That's about the same amount my SS4 Goku restores on his ultimate, when I think he restores 40%. So yeah, that Goku's healing a ton, so that is good as well. But the issues with GT run very, very deep, and you know, really the issue with GT is that if we take a look at GT, it's impossible to really look at this team and not point out the huge issue with this team arises with the fact that it hardly ever gets buffed. So here's an explainer. So I'm not really going to go crazy far back, but this is always, if you've been playing since all these characters released, you know this. This has always been a pattern. GT will get a few characters, and then they'll go a long time, and then they'll get a few more characters, and then they'll go a long time, rinse and repeat, and we get to the point where their most recent summonable characters, look at the bottom of this, they're all free characters. EX Baby doesn't really count, but they're all free characters, and the Omega Shenron was the longest. He came out like August of last year or something like that, so they took a long time in between, but their last summonable characters came out basically at the 3-year anniversary and directly after, with Goku and Oob coming out directly after the anniversary ended. So no other major tag really gets this treatment. To be fair, like you could say maybe like Regen nowadays, but GT has always got this treatment. So that's an issue, because what happens is GT is forced every single time they decide to revive this team is forced to have to get a full new roster. They have to give them a bunch of new stuff, and they have to give them basically they got to jump the power creep. They've got to be meta relevant, things like that. And their latest attempt at doing this is trying to give them free characters. Now, first and foremost, I think Super 17 is an absolute beast. He is really, really powerful, a really good card, but even he can't escape some of the main issues with free characters, such as the gimping of stats, the gimping of modifiers here, major impact. 50% is enough to offset that a little bit, but like they gimp these characters in different ways, but he in and of himself I think is really good. And Kid Goku has, like I said earlier, some things in his kit that I think are really solid, but the free character wave is not going to do it, right? So the issue with this team is that it doesn't get updated enough. So when it comes time to give them more stuff, they're really out of date. The only other things that they got in between then, I think, was a couple of Zenkais, right? They got, well, recently they started getting Zenkais as well. They got Pan, they got Green SS4 Goku Zenkai. This Vegeta was the oldest or the newest Zenkai before those, I believe. And let's kind of take a look at what they're doing for some of these Zenkais. So here's the deal with this Vegeta. With a lot of Zenkais throughout the course of this year, they've really just been accentuating kits. They're not really giving them a lot of stuff. There are some outliers with some characters that are picking up stuff. Like I think Great Saiyaman 1 and 2 got both Blast Armor and Nullify Endurance, which is crazy. They might have had one of those, but they have at least both of those things now on their ultimates post Zenkai. Not the Dragon Fist, but the blue Goku from the Broly movie with his Zenkai picked up Endurance. They don't do that type of stuff very often. Purple SS4 Goku a couple of years back got a ton of stuff added to his kit, like nullifying cover changes. They just don't do that very much. So here's the big thing that they added to this Vegeta's kit, and you'll notice instantly what they're doing here. So when he switches out, he's a support character. Sun family characters get a buff. Saiyan characters get a buff. GT and Super Saiyan get these different buffs. Now, really what this is trying to say is you want to be using this guy alongside GT characters that are Super Saiyan 4s, and ideally Super Saiyan 4 Gokus, right? So this team has a few different issues in that they have this design choice where they're being super selective, right? Let's look at the most recent Zenkai. He has this issue too. If he's on a full GT team, or I think it's GT or Saiyan, he gets these buffs as well. Now, it's good that they included the Saiyan tag in there, but it does also limit the it does hinder his options for team building as well. This guy, again, he has to be on a full GT team, and you're seeing what they're doing as they're trying to lock these characters on specific teams. And the reason that they're doing that is because they know as soon as the big boys come out or things like that, they are going to be exported to teams like movies in the leader slot, things like that. And I feel like some of this is also our fault, right? Because the leader slot brought some really good creativity with it, but also brought a lot of degenerate play. And what I mean by that is now you throw your best character there. For a long time, the androids were on teams they shouldn't be on because the leader slot, for example. And again, the same is applying now. You throw Pan there, you throw Beast Gohan there on whatever team you're using, and obviously most people are not excited about or happy about that being the way that these teams are run nowadays, and it was a really big shift from the norm. So obviously they're trying to kind of combat that and limit the characters you bring into battle, things like that, and try to make it kind of shore up. Now, the next issue with the design choice for GT is that they need to pick a side, and they don't really need to pick a side like they wouldn't need to pick a side as badly as if they would have if they had been buffing this team constantly or every other month, or like they do for Future. It seems like Future's a little outdated, but it's still better than this by a long shot, right? A long shot better. But like they buff that team every chance they get, right? So no team, I really wanted to get this point across. No major tag like Future or movies or Saiyans, the family teams or whatever, who cares? They don't care about those teams themselves. But like most of the tags don't get this treatment, right? So if they had chosen to buff this team periodically, they wouldn't have this issue where a lot of characters are halfway built to be melee based or are halfway built to be ranged based. And that's not generally an issue on your tippy top teams. Your best of the best teams, yeah, there's min-maxing there if you build your teams with like Beast Gohan with mainly strike attack, Z abilities and stuff. But the reality is Beast Gohan, for example, will tear you apart with strike teams or blast teams, especially if he has a Zenkai buff, which we'll talk about Zenkais in a minute. He will tear you apart regardless. The best of the best will be able to make use of that stuff. Now GT doesn't have that, but their secondary characters, their options that they have access to are largely hamstrung. So here's an example of the new Goku. He is 100% blast based, and he's putting 2 blast cards in your deck. Now if we take a look at the other characters we have here, one of the best possible synergies for a red character based on the color wheel is a purple. And first and foremost, this is going to definitely get corrected. We only have one summonable sparking purple in this entire list. Throughout the entire lifespan of the game, they have only put out one summonable sparking purple character. In fact, take the word summonable out. They've only put one purple sparking character on this entire team. Take the word out. So this guy. And you may think he has good synergy because originally he was designed in a way where he could be ran with with red SS4 Vegeta, and he was doing this blast thing here and just cute stuff. He even had some support down here, right? Which is, they gave this guy a lot. He has some support in here somewhere. And no. That is not the way the game is played for these characters. In the actual concept of team building, you're picking a side. If you look at, again, the actually fleshed out teams, they have a lot of options. They can go either way. And then you have the characters that can play in between, like I was saying, like Beast Gohan or the androids. They have a preference, but they can play in between. They can rip you apart with any card, basically. And if they can't, like Cooler, for example, he's an example of Lineage of Evil is heavily blast-based. And he is nowhere near as good on that team as he is on movies because the abilities just suck for strike-based characters on Lineage of Evil. However, even on his worst day, Cooler can still change all those blasts to being strikes and fix that issue to a degree. He's not going to have those blast cards in his deck that he doesn't want to use that he's going to do garbage with, right? So this team doesn't have that as the backdrop for them. I mean, they try to. They're trying to do that, but the issue is it's all over the place. There's no consistency with this team because there's never actually been consistency with this team. And since they take so long off, all of their characters are outdated. That's the next point of the video. Let's look at their Z abilities. I've talked about this before. Even their most recent Zenkais cannot escape this because it's just a conceptual issue when it comes to all Zenkais on every single team in the game. This applies to every single Zenkai. And the point is their Z abilities are garbage depending on how old they are. If it was a newer Zenkai at the time they got their Zenkai, like Purple Zamasu, for example, his Z ability was pretty solid, okay? It's still okay. It's not great, but it's still pretty solid. Pan's Z ability is terrible. The percentage is terrible. The tags are terrible. I mean, it's just not good. So we have a better version of Pan's because power creep was existing at 38% to a single stat and to a couple of tags. It's literally a power creep version of Pan's, 10% higher or whatever. So it's literally the same concept, but power creep existed. But even this is trash when we could take a look at Z abilities on modern characters and see how they look now. So this is a free character. Double stat, 3 tags, 33%. Which would you think is better? So they don't buff the Z abilities on those characters, which means that if your team, and GT is this team right now, if your team relies on Zenkai characters in more than one capacity, so Zenkais all have the issue with the bad tags if they're just so this guy doesn't have that because his Z ability was good, right? So like if they have a bad one, then they're just kind of stuck. But all Zenkais have this issue. So again, if I were to try to Zenkai buff a character on another team, if that character is good enough and stuff like that, and you're not trying to go too heavy in, you can make up for the difference with Z abilities or things like that. Other Z abilities and other characters that are actually good. But if your team actually relies on a number of these characters to actually be competent fighters for your team and not just Zenkai buffing on the bench, you know, you're kind of stuck. And GT is that team right now where a lot of their best characters are actually Zenkais. The green Goku, the blue Pan, those are two of the best characters on this entire list, and they're Zenkais. And it doesn't really matter how good individually they are, because I think this Pan is the second best support character in the game, only to her younger self. But even then, you're still at an innate disadvantage because 2 reasons. For one, if you want to pair her with the green Goku, this Z ability does literally nothing for him. I do not care if they say that Goku, he might have a strike attack increase in there. You know, sometimes on Zenkais, they give them like on entry, get 30% strike attack. If they're a melee, if they're a ranged character, they do that type of stuff. I do not at all care, okay? The character is 10 times better using blast than he would be using strikes. What they did for this guy is I think he gets the bonus for strikes or blasts right here for the anytime he uses a card, he gets the damage increase, but it's still the blast cost is still the only thing going down. So like they flexibility, they gave him a little flexibility. I think that's how he was not designed before Zenkai. I don't care. That doesn't help him in any way. So you're in a really bad spot team composition wise. And again, this is a issue throughout the roster for this team. And the last thing I'll say, because I could really keep going for another 10-15 minutes, the last, and I really want to make this clear, these points are not just for GT. They are for any team that is in this position, right? Any team that's built around a tag that is in this position, it's not, I can go to girls and have the same issues, right? It's not just the GT thing, but it stems from the fact that GT never gets updated. So when it comes time to update it, they've got to do a massive overhaul. If you were playing for the 3-year anniversary, think back to that time, okay? Think back to that time. They dropped this guy, okay? They dropped an LF for these characters. They Zenkai'd these 2 older Super Saiyan 4s. They Zenkai'd 17. They Zenkai'd this guy. They dropped SS4 Gogeta alongside Ice and Nova. They gave them 2 EXs here too on those banners as well. And then directly after, they gave them this guy and the Oob, and they gave them that GT Vegeta at the very bottom. And then they finished off with Omega Shenron. They gave them a ton of stuff right before the anniversary, leading up to and throughout the end of the anniversary. So you gotta, if you're GT, you got to do this thing every single time it comes time for you to get a buff, where they just give you a crap ton of stuff, okay? So that's more or less the issue with them not buffing these teams very often. And unfortunately, since they have to do that, you get in a position where these older characters, whether they have a Zenkai or not, if the Zenkai is not particularly like crazy good, then they're just outdated. All these characters are unusable, right? It will strip the Zenkais off those characters and just look at these characters as they are. They're all unusable by today's standards. All the ones on the screen. They're not... Okay. You could take Super Baby 2 and put yourself at a disadvantage and get advantage out of his healing, and you could use him. You could take whoever, again, take their Zenkais off. You could use them. Their Zenkai forms on these characters, they're obviously a lot better, but they're nothing special on almost every Zenkai on the screen. None of them are anything special. Right? And that's a whole other discussion because Zenkais have just been left by the wayside. And now we scroll all the way down even further. How many characters are actually still even considered to be usable? Those Omegas and Sins right there in the 4th row from the bottom? No. That SS4 Goku, the yellow one, he's actually pretty solid with his equip. I'll give him that. Ice Nova, the 17, the baby, no. The anniversary character with Oob and then also SS3, they're okay. But then you get to this problem where it's not just that they're not usable, it's that they're lacking utility. Newer characters are coming out and they're nullifying everything. They're having cover changes on everything. They're having access to endurance and revive, and not really revive as much, but endurance, and they're picking up a ton more damage increases. They're doing more cuts. I mean, if we just look at Pan, and Pan is like, oh my god, she's ridiculous. And Oob is a character that is designed in a way similar to Pan in that he's designed to really make the game very annoying for your opponent. But Pan is that to the 10th degree. Not the blue Pan, the red superhero Pan, where she is out there constantly reducing your ki. She has a special cover change. She's the best support in the game. She's increasing allies' damage on her strikes and blasts. Mind you, this is not an LF. This is a 1% sparking, equivalent to most of the characters you see on the screen right now. She is a character that is doing main ability sealing, all these other things, right? She's healing her allies anytime she's hit. She's healing when she switches out. She's just, oh my god, it's all over the place. So you have a character in just one character, right? In Pan that has more utility than like all these characters combined. Seriously. The only character on this entire list that even comes close to doing the amount of just sheer things she does is Gogeta. And Pan does more damage than Gogeta. So unless they're going to tell me they're giving this guy a Zenkai, I mean, he's their last hope. Well, not their last hope, but their best hope of characters on the screen currently, or an Oob Zenkai would work. SS3 Goku, if he picks up Nullify covers, his Zenkai would be good too. I don't believe he has that anywhere. He's a combo character. He does a lot of sub count reduction, good stuff like that. He has some good utility, but without Nullify covers, who cares, right? It is what it is. That's one of my favorite characters in the whole game. Who cares? So I'll leave you with that. GT is a team that I would tread super duper lightly in terms of investing into. I've given you all the reasons why this team is garbage. I've given you all, and you know, normally I would say, okay, well, maybe not garbage, but they're not good. I don't normally say definitive stuff like that, but I think this team sucks. And I don't mean that to offend the GT fans. I just think they didn't do a good job with this team. I think a lot of characters need Zenkais. I think if the characters that are old enough get their Zenkais, everybody's going to be trash. I think this team needs a number of new characters, and not just new characters. They've got to be as good as what's the baseline? What's the baseline on a 1% sparking? I can't say as good as Pan because she's like, I think Pan is the second best character in the game. So she's a high standard. What about as good as 3 to 4 characters as good as Superhero Piccolo? How about that? He's arguably top 10. So how about that? 3 to 4 characters at least that good, and they really need one character, Ultra or LF or something, 1 to 2 characters, if you're really being lucky, that are top 5 worthy. That's what this team really needs to not be considered, you know, mid, as people would say. So, and again, There's restrictions on these characters. Maybe they put restrictions on those for the teams they're on. So I really don't know what they're doing. But I think this team would be a team that, unless you're a huge GT fan, if Legends Festival winds up being GT, and if there is any sort of restrictions on a potential, you know, SS4 Gogeta or a tag Goku and Vegeta where they have to be on a GT team, unless you just really like the character, I'm saying they're not worth it. Because look how they treat this team. Look how the devs treat this team. Look how they've always treated this team. They've never given a flying F about this team. And the only reason it gets periodically buffed is because there's a number of GT fans and SS4 sells really well. They have always done this thing, like I said in the beginning, where they will drop a little bit. They'll give you a dribble of characters and then take a hiatus. A dribble of characters and take a hiatus. And their most recent hiatus was basically a year. It was actually a year and some. It's actually been basically a year and a half if we're talking about summonable characters. The Goku and the U came out like August, right? So like it's been almost a year and a half. Seriously. So this is how they treat this team. So I can't really take this team seriously. So I'm going to conclude because I still went another 5 minutes longer than I wanted to. If you didn't see the Kid Goku video, I really do like this character. Check it out. The video is going to be clickable on the screen right now. And I'll see you all in the next one.